All right. Hey, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive. You know, sometimes the news throws you a curveball.
Yeah.
And I think we got one of those today. We're going to be talking about the CDC.
Okay.
Everyone's heard of the CDC, but you don't really think about
Right.
how the head of the CDC gets picked. And it turns out that's a lot more exciting than you might think.
It can be.
So,
What?
the White House had a nominee for the head of the CDC,
Uh-huh.
and they pulled the nomination
They did.
less than an hour before the confirmation hearing.
Wow.
It's pretty crazy stuff.
Yeah. What happened there?
So the nominee,
Yeah.
his name is Dave Weldon.
Okay.
He's a physician. He's a former congressman from Florida. Seems like on paper, maybe a decent pick,
Yeah, you would think.
but he's a vaccine critic.
Oh.
And that is what I think really threw a wrench in the works.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big deal, right? Because the CDC, they're not just about, responding to like the occasional outbreak or anything like that. They set guidelines that, they influence school vaccination requirements, travel advisories, all kinds of things.
Food safety.
Cancer screenings.
Yeah.
So the director of the CDC has really their hands in all these different pots.
It's a big deal.
It is.
So you can understand why somebody who's skeptical of vaccines being in charge of the CDC would cause some concern.
For sure, especially since, they're so involved in vaccination programs and recommendations.
Right. And we actually have a very current and kind of scary example of why this is such a big deal.
Oh, really?
We have a record measles outbreak happening
Oh, gosh.
in Texas, New Mexico, and Oklahoma right now.
Wow.
And it really shows you how important public trust in vaccines is.
It does.
And how important the CDC is in maintaining that trust.
Right.
So the big question is, why did the White House pull this nomination?
Yeah, why so suddenly?
They said officially that it was because he lacked votes in the Senate for confirmation. But a lot of people are thinking that really it's his stance on vaccines.
It's hard to imagine that didn't play a part.
It's hard to imagine. And, people were expecting the senators to really question him about those views.
I bet.
Especially with all this controversy swirling around about, the CDC reopening studies into the link between vaccines and autism.
Oh, wow.
Which is, a whole other...
That's a whole can of worms.
A whole other can of worms. And to make things even more interesting, the CDC also canceled a meeting of its immunization advisors. And they didn't even reschedule it, so that kind of looks a little suspicious.
A little bit, yeah.
Like maybe they're trying to duck some scrutiny.
Yeah, avoid some questions.
And on top of all of this,
yeah,
the person in charge of the CDC.
Oh, right.
Robert F. Kennedy Jr.
The Health and Human Services Secretary.
Yes. He's also been criticized for his stance on vaccines.
Really?
People have accused him of inflating the risks of measles vaccines. So you have all this going on, and then you add in the fact that Weldon would have been the first CDC director nominee to actually face Senate confirmation. There was a law change recently that made that happen.
Interesting.
So this whole thing is a pretty big deal.
It is. It kind of feels like we're in uncharted territory here.
Yeah.
What does this mean going forward?
Right.
Will we see the Senate demanding nominees with solid scientific backgrounds?
Right.
Will the White House be more careful about who they pick?
Right.
Knowing that there's all this scrutiny on the CDC?
Right.
I mean, this is a huge moment for public health leadership in this country.
Yeah, it really is.
This is fascinating.
So we've got a pulled nomination. We've got a vaccine debate raging. We've got a measles outbreak. We've got a canceled meeting.
Yeah.
And a lot of uncertainty about the future of the CDC.
A lot of uncertainty, a lot to think about.
Yeah.
It really makes you think about, the interplay between science and politics and public trust.
And it also makes you think about, the role of scientific expertise in decision-making.
That's a good point.
Yeah, where does that stand?
Yeah, what does that even mean anymore? This deep dive is definitely a lot to chew on, but I think it really goes to show you that, something that might seem kind of boring, like choosing the head of the CDC, can actually become a really important flashpoint in a much larger debate.
It's a microcosm of a lot of things going on.
It is.
That's a good way to put it.
So I think what we all need to do is keep asking these questions.
Yes, stay informed.
Stay informed. And make sure our voices are heard.
Absolutely.
All right, everybody. That's it for this deep dive. Until next time.